Okay, check this out. This is the new generation Honda Civic, and by now you probably watched a ton of reviews of this and maybe comparisons as well. But in this video, I'm going to tell you why I think you should pick the Honda Elantra over this new generation Civic. Let's start first with the price. Well, in Canada, the Civic starts at $24,000. The Elantra starts at $19,000. How can you beat that price? That is quite impressive. Even if you live in the States, you're still going to pay more for the Civic in comparison to the Elantra. The Elantra offers a manual transmission. It also offers a hybrid. Today people are going for hybrids more than electrics because you have the option to have an actual motor like this and the electric motor on the side. So if you're out of battery, you can still drive the vehicle. I also think that this new generation Civic is not as good looking. It's too simple. It's very different from the outgoing model. I think the outgoing model actually looks better at this point in comparison to this. This kind of looks like a mini Accord. So I wouldn't say that is as innovative, but I do like some things about it on the outside. So for example, the wheels that this Touring is equipped with, actually, they're pretty nice and it makes the car look very sporty in my opinion. I also would pick the hatchback over this sedan that we have for today's video. Now let's try how fast this thing is. Launch it. Spinning, spinning, spinning. That's CVT. Again, in a car like this you don't expect, or you definitely are not looking for power, but it would be nice to have some sort of reaction out of that engine when you need it. Like you press it and it's like, come on, keep going. And I also have it in sport mode. There's the other problem with this car that I think this is louder on the inside compared to the outgoing model. I can actually hear everything from the road, cars passing by, but loud. Like cars are passing by, you can hear pretty much anything. You can hear a 2-liter engine on the outside, even with the standard exhaust. They could have done a little bit better. Like, I think the build quality overall of this car, it's not what I expected from Honda. Some people will say, well, it's not as expensive, therefore you're not going to expect a crazy amount of noise canceling on the inside or the best quality. Yes, but in comparison to other models, I think this is not the highest quality. I've driven the Elantra and in the Toyota Corolla, but the Toyota Corolla by now it's actually kind of like outdated at this point. But I think this is just not as good as the Elantra in this case that I'm comparing it to against in terms of the things that I already pointed out. There's also the fact that the side mirrors are pretty small in this car and visibility overall is not that great in my opinion. Let's talk about quality as well, because I have to say this is actually very disappointing in my opinion. I feel like Honda really went down the road of cutting a lot of costs for this, and there are some issues that I have with this car. Like for example, the door panel. If you get closer, just look at this. I can actually push the door all the way through. Like this is, my finger can actually, look how this thing moves. Like that's not good quality. And the more you pressure that, and this thing is about to come out, the plastic. I also have a problem with the interior quality. Like look at this. These things in the long run, they're gonna break. I don't think they're gonna last. I love the design, don't get me wrong. I love the fact that I've introduced that. It's very different. But even these, what are these, like joysticks? I think with time, the chances of this actually surviving, it's very, very small. There's also the quality built inside. I'm gonna put the microphone close as I'm actually grabbing this area to show you how you can hear those cracking noise coming out of the plastic. Let me just get it closer for you. Like you can hear the cracking noise everywhere. The plastic inside is not as, like, it's not as good in my opinion. And with time, you know what's going to happen is that this is going to get louder and louder because the quality. Like that is my next problem with the interior of the new Honda Civic. There's also the infotainment display. The software itself, I find it to be quite slow. Like look at this as I'm working through. Come on. Let's go into that. This part here is intuitive, but when you switch between apps, Like it really takes time. It's not as fast than into the navigation system, especially when you're driving and you try to use it quickly. It's not the fastest. This to me feels very much like the outgoing model. It feels as slow as that. There's the other problem as well, the backup camera. What is this? This feels like a 144p pixel camera. The quality feels like it's from 1980s, 1990s. I don't understand why they had to cheap out and stuff like this. Like, you have the new Elantra, which is quite impressive, and the camera is sharp. I love that they've introduced the fact that you can now switch in between different modes. That's quite nice. But the quality of it, I want you to look at this here for a second. The quality in person is not great for the backup camera. And that's another thing that I don't like about the new Civic, is the fact that even in safety, they've kind of cut costs a lot. This is, to me, could have been so much better, and it could have been a bit more faster than what we have at this point. Let's talk about that actual infotainment display. I'm going to start up the car, and let's see how long it's going to take for that thing to actually start all the way to the main menu. Okay, here we go. Going to be waiting here for at least like 20 seconds or so. It's going to be black now, dark, and then into that. Take some time. Another problem I have with this car is also the rear view mirror. Because of the design of this thing at the back, there's literally tiny little space for you to look at the back of this car. If you're looking at the mirror, you can't really tell much about the license plate of the person behind you unless they're far away from you. The actual windshield itself, the rear one, is so small that is so tiny. It's just like a thin line. Also, you have the headrest in the back, which really don't help the situation that much. And things don't get better. Actually, they get worse. This is the center armrest. Technically, you use this to put a lot of stuff in there and you expect some space. I feel like they have actually made this smaller than the outgoing model. Look at this. This is actually a little container there that you can put. It only takes my small bag. Maybe you can put a phone here and this equipment of mine, and that's it. That's literally what you get. It's very, very tiny. They could have done a lot better with this. I understand maybe the layout wasn't designed that way, but I think the armrest could have been a bit bigger. There's also the issue of space. You see, this car, in my opinion, is not as friendly to people like myself. I'm 6'2", so I'm pretty tall. And I find this to be very claustrophobic inside, and the space is not there for me. Let's start with the second row. I'm going to try to get in. Okay. So for me to sit comfortably in this car, as you can see, like, there's space, but there's not enough space in the back. So if I was, for example, a passenger in this car, I definitely didn't want to get into this for a 4-hour trip. I'll do an hour, but that's it. It's just not that great for space overall. Let's try the front area as a driver. Now, I'm going to sit inside as a driver. First of all, the seat is all the way down. There's like a little bit of space, but if you close the actual sunshade here, there's a bit of space, but I wouldn't say that I feel comfortable as a driver in this car. They could have done better a bit with more headroom, a bit more leg room overall. There's a bit of space here. It's not as bad, but overall, I just don't feel as comfortable. I've been into the Elantra, and I think the Elantra feels more spacious for me as a driver. Even in the back, you can sit nice and comfortably. Let's talk about another thing that I found with this new Civic, and I'm not 100% sure whether the older one had the same thing. You see, this is the security latch in case, if, for example, the trunk breaks, because this is technically automatic. So you have a button located in here and one inside that you can press to open it and it just releases. But the actual tailgate itself, the trunk, is not fully automatic. But here's one problem I find with that. Most cars tend to have it right here. So if you, for example, want to open it from inside, this is right on here. Let's do a quick test. I'm just going to close this quickly. And now I have the seat over here. I have it down. So let's try to see if the camera can find where it is. You have a hard time trying to figure out where this thing is. unless you know exactly where it is. But generally most cars have it in that position, so that way you can see it if you're looking straight. This is located right at the top, and it's so tiny that unless you can try to figure out with your finger, there's no way to open that. I think that's a fail, in my opinion, from Honda. That could have been designed completely different or just used like normal vehicles. I do think that there are some great things about this vehicle, that Honda did a great job overall. But again, I stick to what I said about those things that I mentioned previously. But let's talk about the good stuff in here, because it does have some good stuff. So for example, it has a beautiful cluster, which I think is pretty smart. It is sharp, and it is very different from the outgoing model, which was completely outdated. For example, it shows you quite a lot of information. You have the car in the center, and look at that. You press the brakes and the light turns on from the little icon. When you go on a highway, the adaptive cruise control shows quite a lot of information. You have the actual lines on the sides, which detect the lines on the highway. That way it keeps you right in between the lines. That's pretty smart. The next thing is, of course, now we have heated seats in the front and there's heated seats in the back. That's pretty good. No ventilated seats at this point, but that's okay. The next thing I like about this is the fact now we have a bit more sharper infotainment display. It's not the fastest, but it looks nice, and it complements the car very well. The position, it's almost perfect for both passenger and driver side. The next thing I like about it is now we have a full wireless charging pads. But what's more important is the fact that my my iPhone 13 Pro Max actually fits in there, which is very, very good. It's easy to slide in, and it charges right away. That's a smart one. The next thing, I like the fact that we have these beautiful 2 cup holders here, and the design overall, it's really nice. It's not overly done. It's easy to find things. That's one thing I like about it. It's very intuitive. Like, we have the actual volume button over here. Sometimes I do get confused a little bit with this because I think it's a actual volume, but with time you get used to it. We have 3 in here for the climate zone, and on top of that, now it also heats the rear windshield. It also heats the side mirrors as well, which is very important during winter time so that you get the best and most clear side mirrors. On top of that, what I like about this is the actual steering wheel. I have to say the design is simplistic, it is futuristic, it is sporty, it is usable, it is very intuitive, and is very smart. And on top of that, things are easy to find. Like, I know on the right side I have my adaptive cruise control, and on the left side I have my radio volume, so nothing is confusing in here. And you have a button in the center for the heated steering wheel. Easy to use, don't have to look for it around this area, it's right on the steering wheel. Then we have 2 pedal shifters in there. So there are some great things about this car that I personally like. There's also the seats. The seats are very comfortable, I have to say. They're nice, and you sit nice and comfortably inside. They hug you in. They're not too tight. They're not too small. That's another thing I like about this car. Now let's wrap up this video and let's end this, and let's talk about why do I have that kind of negative feeling. No. To end this video, I think because of what Hyundai right now is offering with their Elantra, they're doing a fantastic job. The pricing is unbeatable on that car. The options are unbeatable. The quality is very different and slightly better, I would say, overall in the Elantra in comparison to this. I like what Honda has done overall. Well, about 40% of the things they've done with this car are nice, are great, but I think they missed out a lot of things that this could have been the people's car properly, in my opinion, and it's just not there. It doesn't cut it. It's my second time that I've had this car, and my opinion actually hasn't changed much on it. I just think it could have been a bit better overall. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What do you think of this? Have you driven it? How do you compare it, maybe if you have an Elantra or if you test drove both? Stay safe. Cheers.